Let's unbox the Hot Wheels Starships Select Resistance X-Wing Fighter. Villa Varykino. If it's Star Wars, we collect it. Hello there, thanks for visiting Villa Varykino. While I am eagerly awaiting the newest wave of Hot Wheels Starship Select Star Wars vehicles to arrive here in New Zealand, I thought I would go back and open up the very last few that I still have in their box. This is the second to last one that I have still in the packaging. This is the Resistance X-Wing Fighter, also known as Poe Dameron's Black One from Black Squadron, as seen in The Force Awakens, particularly prominent during the Battle of Starkiller Base. I think it's interesting that Poe Dameron himself is not mentioned here. It is labeled as Resistance X-Wing Fighter, and of course we all know that that iconic little droid there in the astromech port is BB-8. So thank you so much for hanging out with me today. Coming up really soon, I'll take a closer look at the Resistance X-Wing out of the packaging. We'll check out all of the details and the flight stand, but first let's take one last look at the box. I really appreciate the way that the Hot Wheels Starship Select line packaging has remained consistent from that very first release to the most recent wave. Fantastic if you like to keep your Star Wars collectibles inside their packaging. They look really nice all lined up together in matching boxes. On the front here we've got a nice clear window that wraps around on both sides there, so you can see the ship inside from some really cool angles. We've got the Star Wars logo here in black and white at the top, and on the lower edge beneath the window we have the ship name, Resistance X-Wing Fighter, the Hot Wheels Starship Select logo there underneath. We can see this is intended for ages 4 and up, and it is made by Mattel. The window on this particular ship is a little bit dark because the ship itself, Black One, is very dark. We've got a black toned insert behind it there, and we don't have a top window on the packaging for this particular range. Instead we have printed graphics. We have a black and white blueprint of the Resistance X-Wing here on the left, and the faction symbol in red here, which of course is the Resistance. It does very much look like the Rebellion logo, of course, there as well. They kind of are the same thing. On the top cardboard hanger we have the number for this particular ship. This is number 13, and again we have the name Resistance X-Wing Fighter there. Moving on to the back, we've got an image here of the Resistance X-Wing Fighter on its included display stand, which is tucked in underneath. We can see that the attachment point lets us swivel the ship around 360 degrees. This is the local price sticker here. Don't be alarmed, this is New Zealand dollars, $30, a little bit on the higher side, but we can find Hot Wheels products generally on sale quite easily, so we generally pay more closer to $24 or $25. If you're interested, 30 New Zealand dollars is the equivalent of roughly 18 US dollars. We've got some of the other ships here from this particular wave, the Millennium Falcon, the AT-AT, and the First Order TIE Fighter. I have unboxed all of these. I opened this one up very recently and took a closer look at it. I really like that one, and of course I love the Falcon and AT-AT as well. The rest of the packaging is just sort of copyright. We can see that it contains one vehicle and one accessory, that accessory being the stand, of course. So yeah, pretty standard. I like the packaging for this one. I do wish it was a little bit lighter, but anyway, I'm going to be taking mine out, so let's get stuck into that. So now I have the Resistance X-Wing Fighter and the box containing the display stand out of the packaging. Before I go over all of the details, just want to have a quick little look at the insert in behind the ship. I really like these inserts. We can see that we've got a black and white blueprint style artwork of the ships from this particular assortment wave. We've got the Resistance X-Wing here at the top, the First Order TIE Fighter, AT-AT, and Millennium Falcon. These are really fun to cut out and keep if you don't want to keep all of the rest of your packaging. But yes, let's get stuck in and go over all of the details on the Resistance X-Wing. So this is how it came out of the box, and of course one of the first questions we want to ask is, do the wings close? Can they move? And yes, they do. They can close up there pretty well. And of course, in doing that, of course, the first thing I'm going to notice is that these wings are plastic. So for the most part, the Hot Wheels Starship Select line are metal, die cast, but because they are children's toys, of course, they're intended for ages 4 and up. To me, they feel more like a collector item, but of course, because they are intended for ages 4 and up, we do have to have some safety aspects to it. So of course, these sharper protrusions here, the laser cannons, these are plastic plastic. You can see that I can wiggle them, but I'm also feeling that these sections here are plastic, which I believe I do have the original trilogy Rebellion X-Wing on hand to do a bit of a comparison very shortly, but I do feel like the wings on those were more metal with only the laser cannons being plastic, so I'm very keen to look at that. That might be because we've got a very tight sort of scissor fit here with the wings. Of course, the wings on this Resistance era X-Wing are different to the original trilogy. This one is a T-70 X-Wing. Of course, the X-Wings in the Rebellion era were T-65, so they have different wings and a few other differences, but it's always the wings that I always think of as being different, and the split engines here, of course, at the front. So let's go over all of the details on this ship before we get into the comparison. So, of course, this is Poe Dameron's second X-Wing that we see in The Force Awakens. His first one is sadly blown up, but of course this one is really prominent during the Battle of Starkiller Base, this one being Black One. Of course, we see him fly that as part of a Black Squadron in the film. It does get destroyed later on in the sequel trilogy. He does get other colored ones. We see an orange one later on, but something about the merchandising around The Force Awakens, this one seemed really prominent. When I think of Poe Dameron's X-Wing, this is the one I always think of, Black One. So I'm really excited to see that this one is in the Hot Wheels Starship Select line, even though they don't necessarily package it as Poe Dameron's. I think the Hot Wheels Starship Select line generally just focuses on the vehicles rather than the characters, because of course we don't have an opening cockpit in this line. This is not plastic, it is not translucent, it is simply a fixed cockpit. It can't open. You can see it's all sculpted shut there, and we have a shiny gloss black paint to sort of replicate a cockpit there. We can't see inside. What we do have, of course, is Poe Dameron's trusty astromech BB-8 here, of course. This is too small to take out. The head doesn't move or anything like that. So we've just got his cute little head peeking out, silver with a little bit of orange trim there. Of course, X-Wings would look just a little bit empty and somehow sort of unfinished if we didn't have an astromech. And of course, the Rebellion X-Wing has trusty R2-D2 in the astromech port as well. So I like that we've got them there. Even though technically they're kind of like a character rather than the vehicle, they are so prominent in the X-Wing design. So let's go over the rest of the details. I really love the paintwork in the Hot Wheels Starship Select line. It's really rare to find a flaw in the paintwork. We've got this fantastic dark grey paint job all over, and then this really striking orange trim. And of course we've got a lot of silver on this one as well. I really like the silver weathering on the sort of nose cone that we've got here, sort of coming back in lines like it's seen action. We've got orange striping on that side, orange and silver running down this side as well. We've got silver accenting on the front of the engines, those are split design engines there as well. Of course, we've got the ends of the laser cannons highlighted in silver there as well. Because of the scale, and these are plastic, the laser cannons aren't quite as fine. They do look a little bit chunky. That's my one sort of critique about the actual sculpting of the X-Wing ships in this design, but I understand they can't be really fine. They would be too easily broken by young fans, and they would be potentially a safety hazard there as well. And they are plastic, of course. We can snap plastic, and if they were metal, they'd just be too dangerous. Moving on to the back, we've got the back of the engines here accented in silver. Not too much else going on in the back. It's pretty much that sort of dark grey across the rest of it. Got a little bit of orange here tucked in against the body there. I do like the stripes that we've got going on the wings here. The wings close fairly tightly when I hold them, but because they're just a little bit more flexible, this particular side wants to kind of sit just a little bit open. This side, again, I can sort of hold it tight or closed, but it kind of wants to sit a little bit open. But that's okay, because when I put it on the stand, I really think the best way to display X-Wings is to put them in a sort of flight mode. Of course, we get that iconic X shape, and it just looks cooler. And of course, when I open it, you can really see all of the paintwork around the wings there as well. This is looking at it from the underside. Pretty clean on the underside. This particular ship doesn't appear to have any sort of weathering or a wash over it. It's pretty clean. Of course, a wash would kind of disappear over most of this dark coloring anyway. I like the silver points here behind BB-8 and of course around the cockpit there. Some really nice sculpting details. Of course, we've always got the fabulous lines and things like that we really get in the die-cast vehicles. Overall, pretty tidy. We've got like one tiny little bump here in the orange on the plastic. I can't tell if that is, I think it's part of the sculpting. Oh, that, yes it is. It's on both sides. I wasn't sure if that was a floor I was looking at or an actual little detail bump, but yes, it does appear on both sides. So that is actually part of the sculpting there. So overall, pretty tidy. So let's go over these wings. So looking at the construction, I believe we've got metal to this line here. This feels metal and it looks like the sort of die-cast metal. And then the wings look like they are this part, and going on to the underside is plastic, because looking at the inside of the wings, it's kind of hard to show it as a focus point there, but I can see attachment rivets, so joining the metal and the plastic components on each of the wings. I can see that on all four wings there, just tucked there on the inside. So that might be a little bit of a downside for some fans who may be more familiar with the Rebellion era X-Wing, which had metal wings all the way out to the end, and it was just the laser cannons that were plastic. It does mean though that we've got a nice tidy attachment point here. It does actually look like it's all sculpted together rather than having the laser cannon attached to the wing. This all looks like that's all sculpted together. So very tidy here. And I do think it is done because of the way that we get this sort of join here. Generally speaking, any of the moving components in this particular line are plastic, just so you don't get that metal on metal sort of abrasion over time. I just think it would be potentially a little bit hard to get that tight join there between those two wings, even though mine don't actually want to sit completely shut. I kind of have to press them shut, but that is really close, and I think that would grind the enamel, the sort of the metal together too much, especially if you want to sort of play with this toy. I do like the click though, the click of when these ones open. It's always just a nice feeling putting these ones on. Not a lot of the ships in the Hot Wheels Starship Select line actually have moving components, because they're more of a display piece rather than toys. You know, we don't have anything that fires, we don't have figures, there's no sort of action features, but of course the X-Wings, they have to have that sort of movement to it, and I think this one just looks really cool. So really impressed with the paint job. The details fantastic. I absolutely love it. We can see that we've got two rivets here on the underside joining the body components together, and we've got that peg hole there to attach it to the display stand. So let's go ahead and get it on its stand, because that's when I think this line really shines. They look fantastic. So tucked in the underside of the packaging is this extra little cardboard box, which we can see contains the two components required to assemble our little stand. So let's get this one out. So the base is wrapped up in tissue paper as usual, and then we have the actual sort of a stand component with the ball-shaped attachment point, which lets us swivel the ships around. So I'm just going to unwrap the base. Oh, this is interesting. This one just says X-Wing Fighter. When I recently opened up the First Order TIE Fighter, that text is a little too long to fit onto the base plate, so it just said First Order TIE. It omitted the word fighter as seen on the outside of the box, and I guess for this one, rather than putting Resistance X-Wing, which I thought, considering that's how they did it for the First Order TIE Fighter, I thought they would just leave off the word fighter. This one just says X-Wing Fighter, which is kind of interesting. That is exactly how the Rebellion T65 base looks. That's really interesting. So of course we've got the faction symbol here, the Resistance Starbird logo here in a metallic silver, and the name for this one, X-Wing Fighter. On the front here we have two embossed logos. Of course we have the classic Star Wars logo there on the left and the Hot Wheels logo here on the right. It's a little hard to read because it is so small, but that does actually say Hot Wheels there. So let's get the two components attached. Always got a good click, and it's always well attached there. So let's go and put our X-Wing on the base. We're going to take that point, and I generally just give it a good sort of wiggle there to attach it. It doesn't snap down, it is just kind of a slow pressure point there. And once I've got it attached, it's very secure. Of course, these are metal. We don't want them accidentally falling off or getting broken or anything like that. They are very secure, but you can also take them off if you want to change them up or anything like that. And of course, as the box implies, we can swivel these around 360 degrees because of that ball attachment point, which is fantastic. And of course, we can also get a lot of angles here. So if you don't like it being straightforward, perhaps you want to sort of get a bit more of an angle there, we can do that. And we've got pretty good clearance from this curved base here. So of course, we can also get the wings down there, and we can swivel that around pretty well there as well. So you can get all sorts of different angles. Personally, most of mine are facing forward, but I like the ability to tip them down just so I can see the top surface detail. There are certain Star Wars vehicles that are a bit more flat in design, so I like seeing the top rather than looking at them sort of nose front first. But X-Wings, there's lots of cool angles. You've got lots of options there. So this looks fantastic. I love the angle here. It always kind of gives it a bit of a forward momentum rather than just being a straight stick. Glossy black. I like that the Hot Wheels Starship Select line have completely uniform bases. We all have this black style of base. There are a couple with some slightly different curves. Between the standard TIE Fighter and the Battle Damaged TIE Fighter, they changed the stand part here to be slightly taller. I don't know why they changed it. I do like the taller one. And of course, some of the land-based vehicles have different shaped ones, like the AT-AT and Sandcrawler. They more just have a base plate. They don't have this tall part here. It is just a one-piece stand there, because of course they don't need to be lifted up for flight mode. It would be funny if Sandcrawlers could fly, but yes, they are on the ground. So this just looks fantastic. The black and silver works really well with the black one. Of course, it does make it very clear that this is a dark gray paint, but I'm pretty sure the black one isn't actually a true sort of gloss black in the actual movie. So I like the colors here. I think this looks really fun. I'm just curious why they didn't actually write Resistance X-Wing to make this different. Maybe it was just cheaper to keep it the same as the Rebellion X-Wing there, but I think this looks cool. I like to see X-Wing variants and vehicle variants because, of course, particularly in the Rebellion, we get customized ships, and obviously that carries through to Resistance. The pilots like to customize their helmets. They have unique paint jobs for their ships as well. We don't really see that in the sort of bad guy factions where all the TIE fighters and everything look the same. So I like having the different paint jobs and variants of the ships from the Rebellion. So I just pop that box out of the way. So we've got space to bring in the Rebellion era T65. So of course we can see, first things first, we've got different height stands here as well. I was not expecting that. So if I get these ones side by side, you can see this one is a lot shorter. That's so different. I was not expecting that. I was curious why they changed it for the TIE Fighter, and they seem to have done it for the X-Wing as well. Of course, if I turn it around to the front, you can see that the text on the bases is the same. This one says X-Wing Fighter, and this one also says X-Wing Fighter. I know the logos are identical. Technically, this is the Rebellion, Rebel Alliance logo, and this is the Resistance logo, but of course, on screen, they are identical. But yeah, this is really fun to see them side by side. I was not expecting the difference in the heights. I've gotten used to, I think, because this X-Wing was part of that very first wave alongside the very first TIE Fighter. I guess they felt that once they had done some of the taller vehicles, that they felt like they needed the ships to be on a taller stand, which means that if you really, really want to, I wasn't actually sure, because this was the same with the TIE Fighter, that if you want to put it on a taller stand, you could simply pick up this one and take the stand and put it on this ship if you want this one to be the same height, because the actual text on the stands are exactly the same. Of course, you can just use this particular strut piece here as well, because it is a two-piece construction. So if you really want to, you can just grab a base of one of those and swap it for this one if you want them to be tall and matching. And you know, I'm kind of tempted to do that myself as well. I can always just put the unstandard vehicles elsewhere in my collection, but it's really fun to see these side by side. And something else that I'm noticing is I think the original trilogy X-Wing can open its wings up wider. And to be honest, I don't know if that is sort of like accurate, that these ones don't open up as wide as the original X-Wings. But certainly with the toy, this one doesn't, that's as wide as that one wants to go. This one goes all the way wider. I can see into the wings here. And I was fairly certain, my memory served me right, and yes, the wings on this one are metal all the way out to the end, and it is just these laser cannons that are plastic. You can see on mine it's just a little bit bent because these ones are much more sort of bendy. These ones are a little bit more rigid. I can still bend it, but I'm kind of doing that by bending the wing. These ones felt sort of almost rubbery with how much I could wiggle them. But I think because these ones are formed as part of the plastic of this wing, it's made out of a sturdier plastic because these wings have to be straight and sturdy as well, forming a little bit more of the structure of it. So they've used a sturdier plastic, which means that these laser cannons just look a little straighter, which I do like. I kind of wish they'd used the plastic that they have used on the Resistance one for this one, so we don't get, it's not droopy, it's just kind of a little bit more of a curve on this one. And as you can see, we've got a pretty heavy weathering over the original trilogy one, which does fit. They are paler, and of course they are battle worn, so we've got this sort of pale sort of brown sort of grey sort of colouring wash over the wings. You can particularly see it on this side here, and of course we've got iconic R2-D2 there as well. So a lot of similarities between the two, but they are unique sculpts. They haven't just simply used, you know, the same body and just painted it a different colour. The wings are completely different. I can see the engines are completely different. Of course, the engines on the front, very different between the two. We've got these sort of 4 smaller circles on the Resistance ones. There are sort of 2 circles that are spliced in half, so we kind of get these sort of half circle shapes on each of the wings. And in the back, these sort of engine exhausts here, very different shapes, much thicker on this one than we have on this one. I know the paint job is different, but really interesting to see these side by side. I know that some of the other toy lines, they do reuse a lot of similar parts just to save sort of time and design costs, but it's nice to see in the Hot Wheels Starship Select line we've got some really unique pieces. It's a little hard to tell if the nose is different on these two. I'd have to, because the paint job is kind of playing with my view, but the sculpting on this, the way that it is seamed, I can see a seam line that kind of stops here and runs back. The seam line on this one comes here and then appears to run up. So I think even the bodies of these are different. Yes, the sculpting details just below the cockpit are different. That's nice to see that even the nose of this one is different. And I think the cockpit on this one's actually longer as well. Really nice. Very true and different, so they are quite unique when you put them side by side there. I'm a little bit frustrated. It's so much about the Hot Wheels Starship Select line has been consistent, and I'm not sure at what point they changed some of the stands to be a little bit taller, because of course the first wave contained, you know, some of the most iconic ships, the original trilogy X-Wing and TIE Fighter, and now they have slightly shorter stands. Of course, by the time you get all of your Hot Wheels Starship Select lined up, we've got ships of all sorts of heights and sizes and scales and things like that, so it doesn't look, you know, really glaring when you get them all lined up on display. But just putting my X-Wings beside each other, I don't know, so part of me kind of wants them to be the same height, but because they are so unique and different to each other, I don't think it really bothers me, to be honest. It's kind of fun, and I can actually get them kind of close because their wings don't actually sort of hit at the same points. So I love the X-Wings. It's so iconic. It's really fun to see that design carried through to the Sequel Trilogy with some upgrades and sort of changes there. This one just looks fantastic. And I just love the way that we can display these ones. These are such a great price point and size for display. I love the Hot Wheels Starship Select line. It's just a little bit of a tongue twister, Starship Select. I kind of wish that the name was a little bit different, but other than that, I love the price point. I love the size, the detail, the attention to detail, the paint job, the weathering on the ones that have weathering, just fantastic. And of course, we've got the names there on the bases. These just look really cool together. I've got one more Hot Wheels Starship Select still in its box, Darth Vader's TIE Advanced. Gonna get that one out of the box really soon while I eagerly await the newest wave. There are some fantastic ships in that new wave. I really hope it arrives in New Zealand soon because, you know, I've got to add them to my collection. So there you go. That was the Resistance X-Wing Fighter from the Hot Wheels Starship Select line, and a bit of a comparison with the original trilogy X-Wing Fighter here as well. Really fun to see these two side by side at last. I've had this one in its box for far too long. Always great to get things out and on display. So thank you so much for hanging out with me today as I opened up another Star Wars collectible and had a lot of fun. I hope you have a wonderful morning, afternoon or evening wherever you are in the galaxy, and let's hang out again very soon for more Star Wars fun. May the Force be with you. If you're a Hot Wheels Starship Select fan, I recently unboxed the First Order TIE Fighter vehicle. That video is linked here in case you haven't already seen it, as well as our whole Hot Wheels Starship Select unboxing playlist. This is the way.